not sure there's a dry eye here in the studio here at Hive Live. I'm sure it's the same for plenty of you watching at home as well. He was simply, Tommy, just so much more than a football manager, wasn't he?
You come to me with glassy eyes.
Sorry.
No, he's an incredible man. Both him and Rita. You know, Rita was like your favourite auntie. She'd give you a hug every time that you seen her, whether you were in or whether you were out of the team. And GT was unbelievable. That's all there is to say. That tops it.
You must feel so lucky just to have had that time with him. I think anyone that crossed paths with him in any walk of life certainly did, but to have worked so closely with him and learn what you did from him.
Yeah, he's a special man, you know. I look back at things now, as when you're older, when you're young sometimes you don't appreciate a lot of the things that's being done to you or being told to you. But now I look back at my life, my career, going into coaching now and just as a parent and all the other stuff, and you've realised that so many of my values were from him. And so many of your values were taught from him on the training pitch and off the training pitch. It was not just about football, it was so much more than just football. You know, it was you as a person, he cared, he genuinely cared about you as a person. Tommy said earlier, he knew all the kids' names, he knew your kids' names, he knew when birthdays was, he knew everything about you, and he really genuinely cared.
He didn't just create a family for the club, he created a family in the dressing room. Yeah. He wanted to get the emotion out of you in the dressing room, whether it be good or bad. If you lost a game, he wants you to be angry, and if you won a game, he wanted you to enjoy it, but show you where you could have done better still, everything you could always do better. He used to, everything about GT was all about being the best that you can be. He used to say, as you left the dressing room every week, he would say, give of your best. And it was a strange terminology for me, because everybody would say, you know, give your best. Yeah. He used to say, give of your best. And he'd explain that in different ways, so that we stayed in the best hotels because they were the best. He used to joke that he drove a Jaguar because it's the best. He demanded the best of everything and everyone.
And then naturally it brought out the best in you as a player. I
think so, because you just didn't want to let him down.
It was a standard, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Every day you came into work, there was a standard of how you looked, how you talked, how you performed, how you trained. And we all held each other to that standard. Yeah. Even we didn't like each other sometimes because we was on each other that much, but he kept us all to a standard, and we all loved each other because we was a family.
But he enthused about that. He wanted his players to take ownership and responsibility. It's often talked about now. It was never then. It was almost like GT was a dictator. He wasn't. He just gave people enough enthusiasm and space to show that you can do whatever you want to do. And you know, I've said on many occasions, without GT I wouldn't have the medals that I have now. And I worked with him for 2 years as a kid at Aston Villa, where if he spoke to me I jumped because I was so scared. And then when I was already at Watford when he came back. So for 7 out of my 18, 19 years as a pro, I worked with GT, so you'd expect me to have fond memories when you talk about the open-top buses, Wembley. He was the second person I rang when my daughters were born. I spoke to my parents and I spoke to
really,
GT.
Truly almost like a father figure to you in some ways.
Yeah, probably because I was late at the hotel. I came straight from, the girls were born at 8:50, 8:51 in Hemel Hempstead Hospital, and I was due to be at the hotel because we had a game the next day against Bristol City, the year that we eventually got promoted as champions. So I had to tell him that I'm sorry I'm late, but they've only just been born. I'd been there all day, straight from the training pitch. So I spoke to my parents and I rang GT, and he mentioned nothing about football. He was just asking how everybody was. He knew my parents that were looking after the dogs in the house. He was just, he knew everything about everyone. And that included when we went for a beer. He knew where we were, he knew whose round it was, because he had a spy in the pub. He always did. But we loved him for it because he trusted us.
Yeah, you said it a couple of times before, Gifton, that I don't think many players can say this about a manager, but he saved your career.
Oh, listen, the man is, for me, I'll take up the whole show. I could just talk about GT. Genuinely, he saved my career. Him and Elton saved my career. I've spoken about that before. The one thing that really stands out to me is when I was 16, And for those of you who know, some maybe don't know, but I had my first kid when I was 16. So I've come in as a 16-year-old, I'm in the changing rooms and everyone's telling me that Graham Taylor wants to speak to me. So I'm worried thinking, well, I might get released because a couple of weeks before there was a kid at Leighton Orient that had a child and he got released.
Right.
So I'm really quite scared thinking I'm going to get released there. So I trickle over to GT's office. And as Tommy said, he sat me down on a small chair. He always have a small chair for everyone else. He have a nice big chair. He sat me down on a small chair. And I was actually worried that he was going to tell me, listen, son, I heard you had a kid. We're going to have to release you. He said to me, how are you? I said, I'm all right. He said, seriously, how are you? I've heard you've had a kid. And I said, yeah. He goes, how are you doing it, son? How are you coping? How are you turning off a train every day? How are you doing for money? So I told him the problems I was having, 16 years old.
Yeah.
So I told him all the stuff I needed, and he sat down across me and took out his own personal checkbook. Not the club's checkbook, his personal checkbook. And he said, how much do you need? So I told him how much I need, and he gave me double. And he wrote me a check, and wherever I asked for, he gave me the double. That he wrote the check. He said, I need you to focus on football, only football. Anything else you need, you come to me. And that was Graham Taylor as a whole. You know, he just cared. You know, he cared, and a lot of people in this game, in football, I can say with my career, didn't care as much as he cared. You know, he really genuinely cared for every single player, and he wanted the best for everyone. And you know, he's a great man.
Yeah. Oh, even making me tear up at that story. He certainly was. Speaking of the small chair, actually, Tommy, I think you made it to the big chair on one occasion, didn't you?
Well, I've just disappointed by telling Gifton earlier on that I made it to the sofa.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
I made it to the sofa. Let me explain. The little chair, when you sat up across from the gaffer, the gaffer's chair was higher. It wasn't a smaller chair, it was just set lower. So he was always higher than you.
Right.
No matter how tall you were, I'm sure he altered it so that his eye level was but that's just how he was. His attention to detail was stunning.
Yeah.
And then as I was leaving the club, you know, he knew he was leaving. He knew Vialli was coming in. So we'd been messing around with contract negotiations for a couple of weeks because I was coming to the end of my contract, and he said to me, listen, it's not, you've got to go. I'm going and you're going. I said, okay. He said, come and see me in the office. So I went into the office, went to sit in the little chair, and he said, no, come over here. I got to sit on the sofa. So I thought we were tight. I thought, right, that's it. GT has invited me onto the sofa. I was offered a cup of coffee. It was never happened before. I'd been in that office for disciplinary reasons several times and sat in that little chair. I got onto the sofa, and he told me the clubs that were interested in signing me, told me which agent to use, told me what money I should ask for. Make sure you go and get this bonus because where you go will get promoted. And I went to Birmingham. In the end, we got promoted. So everything that he said in the office that day, it took a while to get to that process, and I kept him informed of the conversations that I had. And he said, just make sure you go and meet every manager, and the ones that you turn down, make sure you speak to them yourself and turn them down because they'll think more of you.
Yeah.
And I did that, and several times after that, he guided every one of his players.
Click here for subscribe.